Well, welcome everyone to this week's Tea and Tech. Thank you for joining us. Excited to chat with you all today, and I'd love to start with some quick introductions. So we'll start at my top left, Richard.
My name is Richard. I am a Dev Mountain grad, and I currently teach web development at Dev Mountain Foundations. And so that's what I'm doing.
Excellent. Nick?
Yep, I'm Nick. I work at a place called ClearPoint Federal Bank and Trust, and I do mostly React, C#, and SQL Server type stuff.
Awesome. Paul?
I am Paul. I am a bootcamp student at Lambda for full stack web. And as I just shared before we started recording, I will be joining the SAP team at my company to launch our next system.
Woo! Yeah. Love to hear good stuff like that. And Jake?
Yeah, I'm Jake. I am a developer for Kroger, and yeah, no, I have nothing else to say.
Cool. Welcome. So ostensibly, I put on the topic. I don't know if you all get the emails, but the topic I published this week was work-life balance. If you want to talk about that, that's great. If not, we can talk about something else entirely. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject. Whether you think it's a terrible idea, right? Like work-life balance, it sounds terrible, right? Who would want that?
I mean, I am terrible at it. COVID has been like the greatest exercise in how much I can overwork in my life.
Gotcha.
And actually, like as bittersweet as returning to the office is for a number of reasons, I appreciate those 3 days in the office just because when I leave the office, it's much easier to turn things off.
That's fair. Definitely understandable.
Yeah, there's that whole debate of like balance versus blend, where it's, are you portioning off your work time and your, I don't know, everything else time, or is work being incorporated into your life? Which one is healthier, more preferable? And the whole idea that we're all working remote definitely has some implications for that.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I don't have an answer to which one's better or anything, but it seems like we're in a work-life blend right now because of all the remote work in the field.
I mean, yeah, this is something that sometimes you see it on Twitter, and there's various debates, and there's like hustle culture, for example, and some people adore it and some people detest it, and there's it's interesting. Before I say too much more, I do want to get other thoughts. Or maybe, I don't know.
I think it's important. When I was younger, I worked, I think, probably more than I should have. I would have been better served, I think, to do other things, pursue other, or just, or even if I was still doing tech related stuff, if I was doing programming, I would have been better served to spend time on like not work projects.
Absolutely.
Like things that I wanted to work on more than like working at 11 o'clock at night on a work thing. I should have spent that time working on some other thing that I wanted to do rather than work.
There's also,
go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
There's also definitely a question of, even if you are working really hard for your business, making sure that you understand, or at least that that there's value in what you're doing for the business. Because before I got into tech, I had a job for 4 years at a company, and I can tell you, I worked very, very hard. But looking back at it, a lot of the time I spent was on things that were not actually that valuable to the business. That they were, it's very easy if you have a quote unquote strong work ethic to be kind of bullheaded and like get into a problem and get attached to that problem and solving it, and then realize that you've spent way more time than was warranted or acceptable for the task you were trying to accomplish. So I don't know. I think hustle culture can be very dangerous in that way.
That is not wrong. Nick, you something else you're going to add to that? I wasn't sure if there was something else there.
I can't remember. I was just gonna say now I take a lunch. I as much as possible I leave at a reasonable time. The weekends I take from they're mine. Unless unless it's an emergency, but
right.
It needs to be like, I'm not gonna let that happen, like every weekend type work thing happen again.
Right.
Like it made me think when you were talking about the hustle culture, it made me think of like that Internet Explorer tweet.
Right.
Yeah.
That got a lot of negative play, I think.
I'm not familiar with what was the tweet.
Nick, do you want to explain?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was, but how they spent like an insane amount of time, marriages were ruined and whatever, but hey, at least we shipped Internet Explorer whatever version. Like, I don't know if that was worth it.
I mean, all for a Chrome installer. That's rough.
It's I don't know how much of this is true in other areas of tech, but I follow news and just general trends in gaming just because it's something I'm very interested in. And game development, of course, is very notorious for quote unquote crunch culture, which is to the point that some like head designers like Sakurai on Smash Brothers like literally die from like working themselves too hard, or do things that are really hard. It seems like a pervasive problem, and I wonder how are other areas of tech prone to this as well, or is that just a gaming thing?
My impression is that working for a gaming company, like everything I've seen is that the culture is far more problematic than normal tech. And to the point where I would almost steer anyone away from it. Like you might think you want to build video games, but I'm not really sure that you want to do that.
I've gotten that advice from literally every senior dev with any exposure to that industry that I've ever talked to, is that no, stay away from game dev. It's not worth it. The money's low. The hours suck. When you're done with your project, you get fired. That's like that. And of course,
sounds like a wonderful gig.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
and tech can be such a great field to work in. Like, but of course there are the culture problems that came up recently with the sexism pervasive in the industry, notably Blizzard, but probably a lot of other companies too.
Going back to work-life balance, were any of you remote prior to COVID?
Not majority remote. I was not majority remote.
I've been remote for 9 of the last 10 years about.
Okay.
So
cool.
One thing I've heard from people who were remote prior to COVID is they already had established space to work, and they already had the established routines. So they didn't fall into a lot of the pitfalls the rest of us did. That's not saying there wasn't overworking for remote people, but they had a bit more understanding of how to navigate that arena.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think having a space is important. When I was little, we lived in Indiana then, and we had my office was in the basement. So every day when the kids were little, I'd say, "All right, I'm going to work," and then I'd walk down the stairs and walk into my office. And then when my daughter we were over at my parents' house, and she was probably only 4 or whatever. My dad had to go down to the basement for a second. She was like, "Oh, granddad's going to work." Like, no, no, he's just going to the basement. But so I think having a defined space where you can kind of like almost like walking into an office, into a building, is important.
Absolutely.
As you can see by my background, it's a very shared space.
That's kind of comments. I recognize most of those games. I respect it.
That's awesome. That's the IKEA square thing, right? I forget what that's called all of a sudden, but is that what that's stored in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a giant one of those. And then
Nice.
in the next room over, we have a library that's just a bunch of those filled with books.
Awesome.
But that's my
Richard-
fiance's office, quote unquote.
Okay. Nice. Were you gonna say something, Richard? Oh, okay. So to bring it back to the IE thing, so to be clear, we were talking. So you talk about like a Chrome installer. This was way before that. Kind of even back, definitely before I was in tech industry for big time. But essentially, the idea was that Microsoft was trying to catch up with Netscape, and they were extremely focused on shipping Internet Explorer and catching up with Netscape, and that they had this extreme drive to do it, and they built a team of people who were driven to deliver this software. And he viewed it, the guy who viewed it very much as an important moment in his life, that something that he looks back on enjoyed in fondly, I guess you could even say that he looked back on it fondly, was the impression that I got from the thread. And it was very quick. People were to criticize the kind of the hustle culture idea around it. Like, yeah, I work late and foosball tournaments at 2 a.m. and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't know. I have a variety of thoughts on work-life balance, because some would say that I don't do a particularly good job with work-life balance myself. There's kind of a discussion there if y'all want to have it, but yeah. Any other thoughts from you all?
I come from like an experience that is pretty like unique. So I've been on staff with a church for a little over 5.5 years before like making this career switch. And there is like there's like a really hard delineation between like work and life. And because you're doing a lot of work on a Sunday. You can be doing a lot of work on a Saturday, depending upon projects and events, and then you're working and doing multiple things in the evenings during the week.
Gotcha.
And then you also have like a lot of these like personal relationships tied up to like what you do for a vocation. And so like that's like just really difficult, and a lot of people like in that world get burnt out because they don't do a good job putting boundaries in place to like protect their time and their time that's important like with their families. And so like, you know, like when like, and we didn't have offices at the church we worked at. So
Mhm.
I did some work from home, some work from the couch at the church, some work from a
Mhm.
coffee shop. And so like there wasn't like a very well established like workspace. Like I do have like a semi, you know, office to work in, but I like had to get really good at just like, even though I was just salaried, like tracking my hours so that I wasn't doing like, you know, ridiculous overtime. And like if I anticipated having a longer Sunday or we had some big event or project on a Saturday, like I just had to carve out that time during the week and protect my time. And so like that's something like I've grown to be like very aware of.
That's a really interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that. One of the biggest things for me when I think about work-life balance is a little bit around like, who are you working for? Like, and so I tend to work a lot, but a lot of times the things that I'm working on are things that I want to do for me. And you know, so typically 5 o'clock, you know, I shut off work stuff and then I'll go do the stuff that I care about and the stuff that I believe will advance my career, either with or without my employer. Because, you know, we have in this you know, industry, you see that people don't stay with a single employer for that long usually. And you know, we can have various opinions on that, of why that is, or you know, if it should be that way. But definitely I think that sometimes you see people where they are putting in all this extra work for their employer, but that's not going to pay off for them in the end, because sometimes their employer doesn't even realize it. Like they're not even making it obvious, the work that they're putting in, and you know, are being recognized for the extra effort that they're putting in. I don't know. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Welcome, Jake.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely attest that happens. So there are a lot of things I would do differently if I could go back to when I was doing my previous job. But yeah, there's this assumption a lot of people, myself included, back then have, that like, if you just work hard enough, people will be noticing it and it will pay off for you. And you know, it will be providing value just by virtue. But like, working hard doesn't keep the company's cash flowing or anything like that. They
Right.
don't like, they really don't care. And yeah, there's a lot of the time just no reason to be putting yourself out like that.
Something that you said that I thought, you know, is important to kind of touch on. You know, there's this thought like, oh, if I just work hard, it'll get noticed. And yes, a little, you know, like there's definitely, you can get noticed that way, but if you're vocal about the work that you're doing, you are much more likely to be noticed for the things that you're doing. You know, and I think people are nervous about that. They are nervous about I'm totally forgetting the word. Like basically self-promotion. Thank you. They're nervous about self-promotion. They're uncomfortable with it. And I think that somehow we've established this, and maybe it's extra Midwestern, I don't know. We've got this like humility mentality, like, you know, I'm just doing my thing. You know, I'm nothing special. But, it's really toxic in a way where I think a lot of people have been conditioned to not self-promote. And as a result, a lot of times you don't get promoted or, recognized for the things that you're doing.
It also, like, the kind of work you're doing matters a lot, because some people are in positions or fields or whatever where they're pushing out new work that is in front of people. But if your job is to keep operations moving correctly, and then it's the kind of job where, like, people only notice when you don't do it, or like when it doesn't work. So for me, the one of the big moments was when I took a vacation, and when they had to realize, like, if I took time off, all of the extra accommodations that they had to make because I wasn't there. So
yes,
maybe the
another great reason to take your vacation, right?
Maybe that's the moral of the story, is take your vacation.
I know there are certain companies and organizations, I think sometimes governments will do this, where each employee is required to take like 2 or 3 weeks of contiguous vacation time every year. And part of that is something around corruption, where, like, if you when they, if you're not there all the time, certain things get noticed that you might have been able to cover up when you're there all the time. I forget where I heard that, but I thought it was super interesting.
Yeah, I think banks. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Nick.
I was just saying, I think banks have a similar type thing, like especially with like trading and
right.
Like if somebody's cooking the books on their trades and they're out for 2 weeks, well, you've got this thing that's going to blow up, and now we know.
Right, exactly.
Not directly related to corruption and fraud, but actually my VP just mentioned the other day that he was reading some study where the effects of vacation don't actually start to take place until the second week, as far as like the full impact of de-stressing and recovery and all of that stuff, because you spend so much of that first week getting to that point of just winding down from being so wound up for work that you don't actually start getting true benefits of vacation until your second week.
But so I can't tell you the last time I took more than a week of vacation.
Me neither. Probably explains my burnout. Going back to what you were saying about working for yourself after your workday, I think it also depends on like how you define work.
Right.
Because like, I don't view this as work. Like initially it was nerve-wracking, and networking is like a nightmare for me, but like now it's become routine. Like I know you guys, like it's something I look forward to each week. Good. So like, I don't consider this work, but my workday absolutely is work.
Right. So, I think there's another side of it where, and I do respect this, where people say, 9 to 5 and I'm done. Like, I don't care about my job. I don't even think about it outside of that. And I think that there's nothing particularly wrong with that, but I definitely think that there are opportunities to advance yourself by even putting in small efforts outside of that. For example, going to meetups occasionally. Some people get extreme about it, where they're doing it all the time, but I say even once a month, just doing something in the community to help increase your knowledge and make those networking connections. I think that adds a lot more value. You know, the cost to value ratio on that can be pretty high.
The way I look at it is a company should not have some like secret expectation that we're going to pay you for N number of hours, but we expect you to do things that will benefit
Right.
us for, you know, an additional, you know, Y number of hours or
Exactly,
whatever.
yeah.
Like I think you should be able to, you know, go to work, do your work, go home and completely, and this is of course, you know, ideal situation, right? But like just
Right.
completely let it go, and that should be considered like meeting expectations, assuming you're
Right.
doing your job well during that time and you're
Of
good
course.
at what you do and that sort of a thing. However, and because I often talk with other developers or younger developers about this, like that is that's the kind of company you want to work for, right?
Right.
Like where that's the expectation. However, that does not mean that putting in that extra, you know, that you shouldn't put in that extra time or that there's no benefit to it. That's
Right.
you kind of taking responsibility for your own career and career growth. You can potentially end up at the same place going down both paths, but it's probably going to take you like exponentially longer if you don't put in the extra work on the side. But that should be up to you and about your career growth, not a company sort of essentially trying to get free hours out of you. Like that's like the distinction, I think.
Right. Yep. I think it's really important to have like honest dialogue with yourself, and you know, evaluating. It's so sometimes it can be easy to fall into things where, you know, you're making choices that you're not exactly happy with, right? But on the other hand, I also personally I struggle with this. You know, it almost seems that sometimes there is this hate for people who, especially when they're building their own business. For example, for someone who's building their own business and they're working hard at it or something like that, and they're really excited and enjoying it. Yes, there's always a danger of burning out with that, particularly. But I don't know. It just, there's a part of me that just thinks this person's not hurting you by doing something that they're excited about and makes them happy. You know, let's, you know, I don't know. I've seen sometimes where people will jump on that and say, super unhealthy. And in ways it is, especially if you're doing it long term. But I also, for example, I hear people in boot camps, you know, and it's a sprint. It is, you know, 14 weeks or so of, yeah, you're going to work on this a lot. And it's not going to be a sustainable pace, right? I don't know. Just what I hear from boot camp grads is like, it's hard. I couldn't do this, you know, for a year. I can do it for a third of a year or whatever, but, you know, trying to extend that along would just be crushing and lead to burnout. But if you have that end date, if you know that there's just a set period of time where, okay, at the end of this, I will have completed this effort and I can, you know, go back to something resembling a normal life.
Can confirm. Being in a part-time full year boot camp, like these past few weeks have definitely been like, I'm feeling my choices now. But I keep focusing on the fact that like I regularly have a week countdown, which is currently at 16 weeks until I'm done with the program.
Nice.
But it
awesome.
definitely hit me this past unit, and I was like, oof, did I make a mistake?
Did you, other boot camp grads, did you ever have that feeling like midway, like, whoa, maybe this wasn't the best choice, or I don't know. Yours was shorter, but more intense, I imagine.
I never had any doubts that it was the right choice. It was definitely difficult, but I never had any doubts about it.
Okay.
But yeah, no, if you tried to do that for like indefinitely, or even like, 2-3 years or whatever, yeah, you would die. Like you would like there's not your body would give out. Like
Right.
my body definitely, and I'm not exaggerating, but like it took a toll on me physically. Like my doctor like asked, like, are you sure about everything you're doing?
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
because you don't sleep, you're working constantly, and you're sedentary in front of a screen all day. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what the point was to this. I'm making it sound horrible. It was a good decision, but yeah, no, it's not sustainable.
And I don't mean to make mine sound like I think it was a bad decision. Like,
Sure.
it was just in that moment, like, did I go about this the right way? But
I totally understand. Yeah, no, we all have moments, right? We're like, what am I doing?
I think you were about to say something before I interrupted.
Oh, I was just going to say that going back to the founder thing, that I think is fine. Like even if like on the IE thing, if they knew there was going to be a big payout at the end, like if you're going to be rewarded for all of that time and effort that you put in and the sacrifices that you make, and if you get like a potentially life-changing amount of money or stock from that, then I'd go for it. But if it's just part of, oh hey, we want to do this and we want you to work like 80 hours a week for the next 6 months, and that's it, then no thanks.
Well, and I think it comes down to if it's a personal choice to do that versus it's a company expectation.
Yeah, huge difference.
Because like, actually, I was having this conversation with people yesterday. I previously worked for TQL, which is super intense cold calling sales. And some people choose to do that long term and are successful. And that is their choice. I think that's totally fine. And someone was arguing that it's morally reprehensible that a company would expect that of you. And we were discussing, well, if you're choosing to work a lot of hours to build your book of business, that's on you. Yes, if the expectation is you always work 70 hours no matter what, then that's on the company.
Welcome back, Richard. Welcome. I don't know if I said welcome, Randy. Thanks for joining.
Howdy. I know we were kind of talking about boot camps there for a minute, but I think this is maybe similar in that, like, I know, so recently I started a new job at Kroger back in March, after having been somewhere else for a couple of years. And I know, like, typically I do tend to like to do things on the side, like be reading some books or working on side projects or working on conference talks or blog posts or whatever. But I also tend to like, I don't feel bad when I don't do that stuff. Like, and like starting a new job, it was so like mentally and socially exhausting that there were probably several months at the beginning that I did very little, if anything, like career related outside of work, because I just needed that like rest and break. But now, as there's like growing familiarity, some of the things at work are less, taxing. I'm starting to kind of like dig back into those things. But I find that like I let that kind of wax and wane, and I don't beat myself up over that. Like I find it to be perfectly acceptable to have, and I know, everybody's different, has different like thresholds and different, endurances and all kinds of things. But, I personally don't beat myself up anymore over having an inconsistent like blog, for example. Now I used to,
right,
but now, I think, what, that is just I enjoy that when I'm doing it. And then when I need a break from it, I'm going to go enjoy other things that are also meaningful to me and valuable. And, you know, would I be able to, you know, build a brand and a blog, you know, better if I was consistent? Absolutely. But it's about like intentionally evaluating those things and deciding like, what do you want for your life? Like, I want enough of that out there to help me grow in my career, but not so much that I miss out on some other things that are important to me. And I know myself, and I know what that looks like for me, which could be very different from somebody else. Somebody else could be like twice as productive as me on these side things, but still feel the same way I do in terms of balance, like still feel like it's an acceptable. So like it's hard to compare, but I do think it's about like knowing what you want and being okay with the trade-offs that are going to come from that.
Yeah. I think I've spoken about this before, but there's a concept I heard a long time ago. I think it was actually in a post from Corey House, but I could be wrong. And essentially the idea is that your life has 4 burners, and you've got family, friends, career, and health. And you typically can't run them all at full blast all the time. Typically, putting more into one is going to force you to make a trade-off in another. And I think that's informative and helpful when we consider the choices that we make.
Yeah, this is, I think maybe it's a different way of saying the same thing, but I remember a long time ago, my father-in-law told me that the way he used to kind of think about it is, you know, you wake up every morning with $1 worth of change, you know, in your pocket. And every time you have like a stressful encounter at work or whatever, like you're throwing a penny here, a dime there. And he said, you want to make sure that when you end your workday and you get back home to friends, family, you know, whatever, you have change left in your pocket. Right. Because you don't want to spend it all at work and then come home and just have nothing left to give to the other people in your life. But I think it's that idea of we all have like a limited amount of energy, focus, excitement, you know, all of these things that we can give on any given day. And also, again, like I think everybody's different too on what those limits look like and what burn. Like for some people, social encounters can just burn that fuel real fast, whereas for other people, like it feels like almost no cost at all. And so like, you know, you just have to kind of know yourself and know, again, like what's valuable to you, and make sure you're making decisions that you get back home with enough change to do the stuff you want to do after work, whether that's a hobby or career development or spending time with, you know, friends and family. But you don't want to spend it all at work. That was the key takeaway, because that's just one aspect of your life. It is not your whole life.
Right. Yeah, that's a good perspective. I like that analogy.
And to add on to that, I think something that my wife and I have been talking about a lot lately is that good things cost change too. And working from home, and she's got days off. She needs time and space. I'm working from home. I stop by. I throw a conversation at her. Oh, I gotta do this later on. Oh, remind me to tell you about this thing later on. And we had to have a discussion where it's like friendly interactions cost change. And if she's trying to do her own thing, that change is getting applied. And oh man, also friend hits you up. Let's go out, get some food. That's a good thing, right? That should recharge it. No, I can call you. You just need to think about it. That's costing you change as well. And once you think of it that way, I feel like you can balance things a lot better. In my personal experience. And I don't mean to be too harsh here, but before this time is over, I've got a tech question that I would love to ask anyone dealing with HTML, because I'm banging my head against a wall. So if anyone would be interested in fielding that in a few moments, or once this is wrapping up, I'm just throwing that out there. I could use help.
I think now's a fair time. I think we were at a lull, so we could talk HTML, and then maybe I can talk Momentum after that.
I have a feeling I know what this question
Jacob
is.
Jacob knows what it is.
Okay.
Okay.
So Randy, I have a solution to all your HTML problems. Come to the dark side. Move to the backend services space.
And you get a
really
whole
nice
new
right
set
now.
of problems. What
Exactly.
luck.
I think actually I kind of know the answer, but it appears to be bad form to put a div inside of a label. The reason
Okay.
why is essentially a label is inline and a div is block. And what they're
Okay.
saying is don't put a block inside of an inline. However, I have a React component that inherently creates a div around it when it spits it back out. It's an image that gets put inside of a wrapper of a div. So I have no way of controlling that, and I have to use that image. And that image is going to be inside of a label. And I can't find any way around it. I'm trying putting a span around the div that is inside of the label, which technically makes it so that it's just passing the problem down one tier. It's not the right thing to do. And this is maybe this might be an ARIA question. Maybe this is an HTML question, but given what I've said, can anyone think of an obvious workaround that I might be missing?
What says that you can't put a block element in an inline element?
Things online. A coworker brought this up,
Okay.
and then a lot of documentation online says so. And I think it might have to do with. Oh no, I can't tell. It's not always obvious if it's bad form versus going to break in some browsers. You know what I mean?
Does it work?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
The answer is it works as far as we can see. We have just found Stack Overflow answers and some documentation, and not just Stack Overflow answers, like some legit documentation, like saying, "Don't do it."
So I can make a span display block. I can make a div display inline.
Exactly.
So that's a CSS concern, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about that right now, I kind of see what you're saying on some level, but I'm not super concerned. I would ask experts. Like, I am not an HTML wizard, but I know HTML wizards, and I'm very happy to know some HTML wizards. So perhaps I can connect you with some of those at Kroger.
I'll run this by other folks. I will.
Okay.
So actually, I think your answer is scratching the itch that I was looking for. Actually, this doesn't seem like a huge problem, and if it works, I was looking for someone saying, no, don't do that. You're gonna get sued, or it's not gonna work on Mozilla 7 or earlier, or you know what I mean. So thank you. I appreciate being able to bring that to the table.
So why do you have to return the div with the image in it?
Because
it's a React component.
It's a React component that is it's baked with a bunch of stuff that is just how our system works.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, I'm about to go.
So it's not just an image.
Well, yeah, it's an image that we're importing a predefined image utility that has an image, but it is doing a lot of other things too, that if we use something else, we would have to code ourselves.
Right.
Yeah,
because I was going to say the only constraint on React that I'm aware of is you have to return a single element.
Yeah.
So you could adjust whatever your casing is. It doesn't necessarily need to be a div as long as it met whatever best practice criteria you're trying to meet.
Yeah.
The other thing, go ahead.
This isn't breaking React or anything. It's the end product of the HTML rendered to the DOM is apparently technically not kosher. And it actually leads me to wonder, and like, don't get me wrong, I am very novice with HTML, but I wonder how many of these rules of like, given that HTML will work, even if it's not right,
I agree.
I wonder how many of
Stylistic,
these rules are, yeah, like don't end a
think-
sentence with a preposition.
yeah, that's what this feels like, the preposition rule, because I think number one and two are, you can, whichever you want is ARIA compliancy and is it going to work generally, I feel like. And after that, Michael, I see you're making a lot of faces. Tell me if you disagree.
I don't think for accessibility concerns, it's going to matter whether it's block or inline.
I
That's
agree.
my-
I mean, generally when I hear people say that's bad practice or good practice, I mean, I'm thinking somewhere between, does it work in ARIA compliancy are the top two, then is
Right.
it readable, and then
The idea is semantic HTML, right? So,
Mhm.
you know, you're doing essentially the right thing by wrapping the label around the thing that is part of the label, you know, but so I think a part of it comes down to is also, does it make sense for that component to do the thing that it's doing, the underlying component? Because there have been times where I've gone into the design system and I said, this is doing more or less, or not doing something in the way it really should. It's either overly complicated or it's you know, not considering certain scenarios. And so we just update the underlying component, and then
That's a
your
good
life
point.
is better.
talk to the person that this image has a lot of guts, and they say, hey, have you considered that you're forcing this to be a block element instead of an inline? This might just mess with some people's styles, and they might.
Is an image a block element to begin with?
I don't know the answer to that question. Does anyone else?
I don't either, but I'm
I think
curious.
it's inline.
Okay.
Of course, I say that, and I'm probably wrong.
Well, the IMG tag is like multiple layers within this.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is,
somewhere-
if an image tag, the IMG tag,
Yeah, images are
if
inline.
it's okay.
Oh,
they're
so you're
inline,
right.
I'm-
It's not changing anything. If it's well, images are inline. But I hear what you're saying. If an image was a block and it's turning it back into a block, then you don't need to add more options where there weren't before.
Right. Yes.
I like that. Thank you all. I know it just took up 10 minutes there, but this is
I think it was an interesting discussion.
Quick,
good.
quick
Key
question.
in tech.
But inline versus block, what can you explain? I don't know if that's.
well, you
like
raise a good point, and I like
terminology
how
I've
Jake.
heard before, or used before.
Inline is it scales to the size of the content within it. Block is it maintains its own structure regardless of the content. That's a general, very basic description.
It's a formatting thing, and I think Michael, you're right. This is a CSS issue. That's why you're allowed to change. You can change things from inline to block. It's how you take a one-dimensional string of data and represent it on a two-dimensional field.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll still run it by the people that I need to run by, but I think you really helped calm.
I'm glad that was helpful. It was a good discussion. All right, I do want to mention Momentum, October 15th at the Hyatt Regency. Early bird tickets close in just under a week. So if you want early bird tickets, spread the word. Make sure that everyone you know knows about it. But it's going to be a fun time.
I can't wait.
I already got vacation approval even for my new job.
Yes. Love it.
This is so exciting for it. It's a new industry, and convention seems like you only get one time to be new to a scene, and I can't wait to just like stars in my eyes.
So we got just a few minutes left. I am going to stop at 5 today. You know, whole work-life balance thing, right? But I'd love to hear if anybody has any questions or thoughts to kind of close us out.
I mean, circling back real quick to like self promotion and building a brand. I had a coworker years ago that was really big on building her brand. And I was
Mhm.
like, that makes no sense in the industry that we're in. And
Mm.
only now, years later, jobs later, moving up, and actually partially because of getting into the tech world, like I'm starting to understand the value of building your brand. And really, the earlier you do that, the easier it is.
Sometimes I think it's easier to accept the concept of personal brand if instead you phrase it as your reputation, and how public that reputation is. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for that insight, Paul. I hope that you all have a great week. I look forward to seeing you all again soon. And I appreciate you joining today.
Likewise. See y'all.
See y'all later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys.
Bye.